Recently, a friend of mine went swimming next to an offshore drilling rig. He came back with a bad case of ITAR. Jokes aside, the international traffic in arms regulations affect a lot of people working with companies in the United States. Many don't even realize they should be concerned. But David, it's not like I'm trying to send Hellfire missiles to Cuba. I don't need to worry about the ITAR, right? Well, like most things involving international trade compliance, it depends. In this video, we're going to learn what the ITAR actually is, and why you should care. But first, I just want to say, thanks for stopping by. If you're interested in content like this, please subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Alright, let's get started. The International Traffic in Arms Regulations are a set of rules that the U.S. State Department uses to govern the commercial defense trade. Specifically, they regulate the manufacture, export, and temporary import of defense articles, the performance of defense services, and brokering activities related to defense articles. This means that Uncle Sam gets to decide whether you send plans for the F-18 to China. Spoiler alert, he's gonna say no. In order to understand how the ITAR works, let's take a look at some important terms. Defense articles are physical items or information that relate to a controlled defense capability. As Yogi Berra once said, 90% of the ITAR is physical. The other half is technical. I might be slightly off, so don't quote me on that. The vast majority of controlled items are tangible hardware. Not like hammers and nails, but assault rifles and ammunition. Hardware includes end items, which are ready for their intended use, as well as parts, components, attachments, and equipment that is used in or with an end item. Technical data, on the other hand, is not hardware, but rather controlled information, which is required to design, manufacture, operate, repair, test, or modify a defense article. It's important to note that this includes software. I know this sounds broad, but thankfully the ITAR excludes certain information. General scientific, mathematical, or engineering principles are never technical data. If it's taught at East Northwestern University's South Campus, you're good to go. Next, any information or software in the public domain is not subject to the ITAR. The definition of public domain can be a little tricky, but essentially, if something has been published and made available to anyone, it's not tech data. Finally, basic marketing information, or general system descriptions of a defense article, are not technical data either. While defense articles are controlled items, defense services are controlled activities. There are three different types. 1. Providing assistance or training related to a defense article. 2. Furnishing any type of controlled technical data. And 3. Providing military training. Unfortunately, military training isn't defined anywhere in the ITAR. Teaching an Army battalion the best way to detect and safely remove mines is pretty clearly a defense service. But if you give them a class on pivot tables in Microsoft Excel, are you caught? Probably not, but it's anyone's guess. Manufacture, while not formally defined anywhere in the ITAR, involves the creation or modification of defense articles. As an example, if you take some raw materials, parts and components, and build an automatic rifle, congratulations, you're a manufacturer. Additionally, if you take the same rifle, but broken, and repair it, then you too are a manufacturer. ITAR exports can arise in several different situations. First, an actual shipment of a defense article out of the United States. Second, transferring control or ownership of a defense article to a non-US person, even in the United States. Third, performing a defense service for a non-US person. And finally, a special situation called a deemed export. This occurs whenever you release technical data to a non-US person within the United States. If you show some controlled information to a colleague from Japan, while both of you are at a conference in Arizona, you're still making an export. An import is basically the opposite of an export. The ITAR is mainly concerned with temporary imports of defense articles, since there will be a subsequent export. Permanent imports fall under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Pro tip: the only time the ITAR cares about permanent imports is with regard to brokering. Speaking of which, Brokering covers any actions to provide for the manufacture, export, import, or transfer of defense articles and services for another party. While the ITAR regulates brokering of non-U.S. origin items, it only applies to the activities of U.S. persons and a small subset of non-U.S. persons. Those who are located in the United States or employed by a U.S. company. So David, I now know what the ITAR is, and the types of things that are controlled, but who actually manages it? Within the U.S. Department of State, the Directorate of Defense Trade Controls ensures that commercial exports of defense items from the U.S. are in line with national security and foreign policy objectives. DDTC publishes and makes regular updates to the ITAR. To accomplish this, one of their major responsibilities is keeping up with the list of defense articles and services, the United States Munitions List. The USML contains 21 categories, which group similar items together. Each category is broken down into subparagraphs, which detail specific controlled attributes. Many items on the USML are specifically enumerated, meaning they're identified directly. For example, the F-35 is a fighter aircraft classified under Category 8, Paragraph A2. Other articles fall into catch-all paragraphs. Parts and components specially designed for the F-35 are included in subparagraph H1. So although landing gear isn't called out on the USML, F-35 landing gear is caught as 8H1. You may have noticed asterisks beside some of the paragraphs. These identify certain categories as significant military equipment. SME, not to be confused with SME, is much more stringently controlled than non-SME categories. David, this is all great, but you still haven't told me how DDTC actually regulates exports. Great segue. The ITAR basically prohibits all exports of defense articles, unless you get permission from DDTC first. Now, before you panic, there are lots of ways to get approval for an international activity. Some are specifically written into the ITAR. For example, there are many allowances for working with companies in Canada without needing a specific approval. This type of an authorization is called an exemption, and each comes with its own requirements. The vast majority of ITAR activities, however, do require you to apply for DDTC's permission. Luckily, they have a web-based system called DEX, which allows you to apply for many different types of authorizations. Licenses cover the export or temporary import of defense articles for up to 4 years. Agreements are used to authorize defense services and can also cover the related hardware and technical data. Imagine you want to sell an ITAR camera to the United Kingdom Ministry of Defense. If you're simply selling the item, you can apply for a DSP-5 license. If you need to repair a camera you already sold them, you can apply for a DSP-73. But if, for example, they want you to do some additional development to integrate the camera with their fleet of Typhoon aircraft, you would need to apply for a technical assistance agreement. Deciding between the various types of authorizations can be complex and is a whole video in itself. Keep on the lookout for a deeper dive into this topic in the coming days. With that, I think we've gotten a pretty good overview of the ITAR. We may have only scratched the surface, but you should now better understand what the international traffic in arms regulations are. If you have any questions or ideas for future videos, remember, go ask David in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please smash the like button. This is David, saying ta-ta for now.